Election Sunday is just a month away, and we're going to break down all the current bubble teams and tell you what their resumes are and how they're going to get in. I'm Joey LaBelle. This is Briggs McLemore, and welcome to the Nothing But Sports podcast. Today, it's going to be a little bit shorter. We're going to cover the bubble teams on the bubble, the last four in, first four out, next four out, courtesy of Joe Lundardi. He's typically pretty good. He's typically pretty spot on. So we're going to give you their resumes and kind of break that down. We will be releasing an episode a little bit late on Friday due to scheduling difficulties. So we're probably going to push that out on Saturday morning or Sunday morning, one of the two. But first, we're going to get into Jerome Tang. And he gets fired from Kansas State. And so he got fired from Kansas State, and he had a press conference after Kansas State's 29-point loss to Cincinnati at home. And they had lost their last two home games by like combined 63 points. And so he comes out in a press conference and says, players don't deserve to wear this uniform, kind of just goes after the players for about a minute and a half. And so Kansas State fired him a day or two later and cited that as a reason for firing him. And they fired him for cause. So it was a way to try to get out of paying their buyout, which they owe him $18 million. And so you're seeing this in college sports a lot, where these egregious buyouts have been paid. You saw it a lot in college football this year, where these egregious buyouts are getting paid because teams are scared of their coaches going to other schools. You saw it. You saw Kurt Signetti get signed to a massive extension. Mike Norvell, Florida State couldn't fire him because of that. And so now Kansas State is stuck with paying an $18 million buyout, but now they're trying to use his comments in the post-game presser to get out of paying that buyout. I don't think it's going to work out for him. I think there's going to be lawyers involved, and he's going to get what he is owed for the most part. So Jerome Tang was 71-57 over his time. He was been there for about 3.5 seasons and led Kansas State to the Elite Eight in his first season. So, Briggs, I will bring you in and get your overall thoughts on just the firing and how Kansas State is trying to get out of paying him his money.
So I got two things I want to touch on here. First, I think these contracts in college sports for coaches are getting way out of control, and to this point, just downright egregious. They're almost being paid too much, and the market's becoming overinflated. Because you have to remember, a lot of these schools are state run schools, and so these are still there's I believe a portion of tax dollars are going to these buyouts because they are state run schools, as I just mentioned. The other thing is, I don't think the comments were all that bad. I mean, I think this is Kansas State reaching to try and not have to pay the $18 million. But if you're a college coach and you're like, hey, my players are soft, and this is something we've seen, I think, since this kind of NIL era has come about, is I don't want to say the softening, but you've seen kind of a change in the mentality of college players. And for a coach to call them out like that and be like, hey, this team is soft, they don't deserve to wear this uniform, I think that's perfectly acceptable for a coach to say. You can argue whether or not it's right or wrong or good or bad for team chemistry, but it's not something where it's like, oh, that's you should not say that at all.
Yeah, it wasn't the most politically correct statement, but at the same point, you kind of need to get a fire under your team. And Kansas State won tonight, or they're up right now. I can't remember, but they needed a fire lit under them, and Kansas State has been. I mean, you can kind of compete in any Power 4 school when it comes to basketball. You can at least make a run to get into the tournament. it's college basketball. It's not like college football where there's levels to this. Like, you can compete as a Power Four school in college basketball. So, and you saw that when Kansas State made it to the Elite Eight in Tang's first year. I don't know who approved this. I genuinely don't know. Because if you're going to make this move with the impression that you're going to get out of paying this money, that's asinine to me. That makes no sense on how you thought you could get away with not paying him his money when you're the one that signed the contract because you were scared of him going to Arkansas, which you should have let him go at that point because that was a overreactionary move, in my opinion, for him to go to Arkansas. So I think it's a sly move, and I don't think it's going to work out for him. They're going to end up having to pay him the $18 million. But I just really wonder who told the decision makers at Kansas State that they were going to be able to get out of paying the $18 million in buyout money. Going to the bubble, we have it updated over this past weekend. A lot happened this past weekend. A couple of teams kind of moved themselves up into better position to make the tournament, kind of push themselves. You kind of saw that with Texas this weekend. So we were planning on doing this on Friday's episode last week. Kind of ran out of time. So we decided we were going to do it this week after this weekend of college basketball wrapped up. And so the most recent thing I saw today, the last four in would be UCLA, TCU, Santa Clara, and San Diego State. First four out would be Missouri, Ohio State, New Mexico, and Cal. The next four out would be Virginia Commonwealth, Virginia Tech, Seton Hall, and West Virginia. So all these teams are on the bubble. Ohio State and West Virginia have been on the bubble for the last 2 or 3 years, and they've just been the 1, 2, and 3 team out. So maybe Ohio State and West Virginia will be able to break through this year. West Virginia, I believe, has a new coach this year as well. So, but moving in, we'll start with UCLA, and these are stats courtesy of Monday night. Did not include the games that were played on today, which is Tuesday night, February 17th. So UCLA 17-8, 9-5 in conference. They are 2-6 in quad 1 games and 15-2 quad 2 through 4. They've won 5 of their last 6, and they're actively playing Michigan State right now. They're down by 28, so it's probably another quad 1 loss. And then they still have Illinois and Nebraska left on their schedule. I think they can really... this loss to Michigan State, assuming that they can't come back, they're down 29 right now with 4 minutes to go. So assuming they can't come back against Michigan State, I think if they can beat Illinois and win most of their other games, maybe they drop another one to Nebraska, I think that can get them in. Because that would be another quad 1 win. That would put you at 3-7 quad 1. And maybe make a little bit of a run in the tournament, in the Big Ten tournament. But I think that'd be enough to get UCLA in. So I'll get your thoughts, Briggs, on anything I left out for UCLA.
You look earlier in the season; they've had a bunch of games against top 10 teams. They played Arizona when they were number 5 very early on in the season. They played Gonzaga, and you look at those were 2 very close losses. The Gonzaga one was only by 10 points, and the Arizona by 4. But the Michigan game was, I think, last week or over the weekend. A 30-point loss. You're looking at another possible 30-point loss to Michigan State. Um, I feel like that's going to be a massive sore thumb. You're trending in the wrong direction too. We talk about this all the time. Peaking at the right time. This feels like they're hitting a trough at the wrong time, and you're looking at, you don't have that easy of a schedule, and at least you're coming home to play Illinois. You're not staying there for another couple days. But it's gonna take a lot to be able to turn the ship around, coming from minus 60 in your last two games to now trying to compete against one of the best teams in the country.
And Illinois can set it on fire whenever they want. I do believe Mick Cronin is one of the better coaches in the Big Ten, even though UCLA's had their struggles this year. Like I said, they're still 2-6 in quad one games, about to be 2-7. So I do. They're in the last four. They're the first team in the last four in. So I don't know how much this will hurt them. They obviously weren't really on the bubble. I think they were one of the last four bye teams before the loss to the Wolverines. But now with this, how far does this drop them in the bracketology? How far does the committee look at this, especially with a couple of weeks left in the season? Because I believe conference championships start. I know like the mid-major conferences start, I believe, on March 1st. I think the Big Ten starts on like March 8th, 9th, something like that. Because Selection Sunday is on March 15th. So, will be interesting. Moving on to Texas Christian. They are 16-9, 6-6 in conference, 5-6 in quad one. So 5 quad one wins is a big deal for TCU. They have a loss in quad two, quad three, and quad four, which does hurt. They've won their last 3, including against Iowa State, and they had the 53rd hardest schedule left. I believe, not 100% sure what their result was tonight as well. I think they were down to UCF last time I looked.
They lost by 11.
I believe UCF was another quad one game. So in theory, it puts them 5-7 quad one. And so they have a very easy schedule. I think they have, I think it's like the 4th easiest schedule left in the Big 12. They don't play any ranked teams. So it
Yeah,
is
they
a
do. They
good.
play Texas. They play Texas Tech on the road.
Okay. So they have one of the easier schedules left in the Big 12. I do 53rd hardest in the country, which is not the hardest when it comes to talking about Power 4 teams. So the conference record does get me a little bit. Obviously, those 6 losses in conference are to, I want to say they're not all quad one. I'm lying, but I think for TCU, you pretty much have to win the rest of your games, except maybe the Texas Tech game. But I think you gotta keep winning and keep building that resume. Otherwise, some other teams are gonna catch up to you, Briggs.
I think they really need to at least. I think you can lose to Texas Tech. You have to win all the other ones. That's no doubt. But if you can keep that Texas Tech game close, make it look competitive, I think that's going to get you some style points. I think you can get in going 4-1 the rest of the way. But if you go 4-2 and you drop one of these games, especially this West Virginia game coming up is massive for them. If they're not able to pull that one out at home, I think their hopes for the March Madness tournament dwindle. Given with the way that the postseason tournaments are for a lot of these conferences, they can make a run in the Big 12 all of a sudden, get hot, and then they're right there in it on Selection Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, conference tournament results can very much vary if you make it all the way to the finals or something like that. Like that gives you a huge advantage because you will string together a couple of quality wins and a couple of game win streak, especially with games back to back to back. Not actually, but like games every 2 days. So that does give you a little bit more of an ability to string together, but You don't have a lot of games left. You don't have a lot of quality games left on your schedule. Moving on to Santa Clara, 22-6, 13-2 in conference. They won 13 of their last 14 until a 94-86 loss to Gonzaga. They are going to be very heavily compared to St. Mary's, and I want to say they lost to them earlier in the season, and now they will have a rematch against them on February 25th. I think the discussion really is that will the West Coast Conference get three bids in? I think that's what they're competing for. So Santa Clara had a huge opportunity against Gonzaga. They kept it close, which is the big thing, a big deal. It was the late night game on Saturday. So I do think Santa Clara has the opportunity. Obviously, the current projections have Santa Clara in right now. They don't have they're not really impressive in any facet when it comes to resume. Their resume is not their strongest. I believe they're lower in the net rankings. But again, you still have opportunities on your schedule to keep winning. And that rematch against St. Mary's is going to be a huge deal if the committee specifically values head to head. San Diego State is 18-6, 12-2 in conference. They would be the third team in the Mountain West if they were to make it in. They haven't set less than 3 teams in the last 5 years. They're 1-4 in quad 1 games, 16-2 the rest of the way. They have a quad 2 and a quad 3 loss. And so they have a couple more opportunities on their schedule. Another team that could make a run in their conference tournament. They've been relatively well in conference this year. I don't think there's anything too crazy. I mean, you would love to have another quad 1 win, but I don't think they have another quad 1 opportunity this year unless they go far in the conference tournament. But your thoughts, Briggs?
I think the two glaring losses on here, and you mentioned the quad 2 and quad 3 loss. That loss by 1 point at Grand Canyon. I mean, kudos for the Grand Canyon win. But if you're San Diego State, I mean, that's a pretty sore thumb on the schedule. And then the 40-point loss to Michigan. And we've talked about Michigan just kind of running through everyone. That's pretty bad.
I don't know how much the committee will look at that because I think the Wolverines are just killing everyone. And they're probably a lot of people's national title picks as of right now. Their only
How does
loss
that
is
make you feel?
they are in they are in college basketball what Ohio State is in football. And Ohio State was too stupid to hire Dusty May. They hired Jake Diebler. And we see where those two programs are because Dusty May is the fastest coach in Big Ten history to reach 50 wins. So yeah, I mean that team's just dominant. Wisconsin showed that they are beatable, but it's gonna take a really good effort for someone to beat the Wolverines. And San Diego State did not have that effort, as they did lose by 40 points. But like I said, I don't think the committee is going to value that loss as much. Yeah. Moving on to Missouri, they are 17-8, 7-5 in conference. They have 6 quad 1 wins, or 6 quad 1 and quad 2 wins. I'm sorry. I believe they're 3-4 in each quad 1 and quad 2. They lost to a bubble team going into the weekend. Texas was much more of a bubble team. They lost to Texas Saturday, and they will have an opportunity to get back on track against Vandy on Wednesday. So, and Missouri is just, they haven't really been able to string together a lot of consistent wins. They're 7-5 in conference, so they just really haven't been able to string together a lot of wins. But the 3 quad 1 wins help their resume, but I will say, even if their resume is comparing to the likes of Texas or Georgia or whoever, the predictive stats aren't there in their favor. And I wonder if that's going to be a reason that they won't get the nod. Now, granted, if they beat Vandy, they are the first team out, so that will bump them up a little bit, especially if San Diego State or Santa Clara or TCU, I believe, just lost. UCLA is just lost, so it does give them the opportunity to bump up. Briggs.
So, and you talked about the uh, schedule comparisons and stat comparisons between them, Texas, and Georgia. And Georgia and Texas both own the head to heads over them, with Texas beating them by a good little bit. So, and they have 2 games against Arkansas left. You win both of those. I mean, that's a pretty decent team that Calipari's got there in Fayetteville. So, I think there's definitely time to solidify a spot in the tournament. But at the same time, it could be very easy for them to just miss it entirely. I mean, they have 3 games left against ranked opponents, and that Tennessee is not just a walkover team. Although they're unranked, they're still pretty decent this year. But yeah,
Anywhere you go in the SEC and the Big Ten this year is no walk in the park. You have so many elite teams in the Big 12. I mean, there's just so many. What?
um, there's a pretty big park you can go walk through right down the road from here.
All right.
I love South Carolina very much, but our men's basketball team is freaking dookie. I mean, it is just so
Only lost by
unbelievably
12 to
bad.
Florida tonight.
I will give them credit. I thought that they weren't even going to come close to covering the spread. I'm pretty sure we lost by 40 something the first. We lost by more than we scored. I thought the first time we played them.
It was close, yeah. They
So I think we talked about that the first time,
doubled South Carolina up.
which is sad. But again, it's a pretty
But
big walk in the park for you, or pretty big park to go walking through here.
regardless, there's both of these conferences are vying for the projections are 10 bids in the league. So assuming they that's the assumption, is like, you have me lose my train of thought. But regardless, anywhere, like, these conferences are very deep, specifically the SEC and the Big Ten. Speaking of the Big Ten, Ohio State 16-9. They're 8-6 in conference. They're 0-8 in quad one games. They fell apart late against Virginia, and that was a brutal watch, especially late in that game. They have a couple more opportunities to bolster their resume. There's 2 minutes and 20 seconds left in this Ohio State and Wisconsin game currently, and they are up by 16. So I don't know if Wisconsin would be considered a quad one win, but if it is, that's a huge win. Wisconsin's currently ranked because I believe they just beat Michigan State, and they've got quite a few good wins because Wisconsin's like comfortably in at this point. So even though they're 18-7, so Wisconsin's pretty comfortably in. So a win against Wisconsin tonight is a huge step in the right direction for the Buckeyes. And Diebler needs to get the all-evasive tournament missing all-evasive tournament out of their system. I mean, the Buckeyes are 16-1 against in quad 2 through quad 4 games. Their quad 2 loss was to Pitt by a buzzer beater. So I believe they still have Purdue. Indiana's a tournament team. They've got a couple more matchups to bolster their resume, but they haven't been able to string wins together. They lost to Virginia on Saturday night. It looks like they're about to get a win tonight. Now, are they going to drop another one? Because it feels like if they don't get another big win, especially against these ranked teams in the Big Ten, they will not make it in the tournament, Briggs.
I completely agree with you. And you look at a lot of the ranked teams that have played so far. You talk about being 0-8 in quad one. That's one of those things where we look at it in football, and it's like, I'm not going to say someone from the Big 12, but I'm just going to throw the Big 12 under the bus here. When we've seen them go to the playoff and just get murdered, like they looked great in the Big 12, but then when you put them up against equal competition, they get slaughtered. Um, I feel like if they can't really eke out a signature win, which we have yet to see them do, they lost both games to Michigan. They lost to Nebraska. They lost against Illinois, and so you have two ranked matchups left after this Wisconsin one. With that at Michigan State being a big one next week. I think that's actually this weekend. But after that, because Penn State's bottom of the Big Ten, Iowa is middle of the pack. Yeah. So I don't know where you're going to get a signature win from this. At least say to the committee, hey, here's what we did. This is why we should be in.
I do think this Wisconsin win will be a big one. Obviously, anything can happen in a minute and a half, but this Wisconsin one will be the big one, especially with Wisconsin's ability to run with the top teams. And wait, how do I want to phrase this? The Buckeyes have been able to run with these ranked teams. They ran with Virginia really well. The Wolverines, I think they're an anomaly, but I think the Buckeyes played with Wisconsin. They played not with Wisconsin, Illinois. They've played with a lot of these ranked teams. They're just not able to pull it out late, and so they performed better in the second half tonight. And so if they can get that momentum going, they will have the opportunity to make the tournament. And yeah, they need to string a couple more wins together to me to bolster that resume. Another ranked win I think that would have them dancing. And the 22nd is, I believe, on Saturday or Sunday. So that's when they play Michigan State. So
Sunday.
Saturday or Sunday. So another opportunity, if you can get these two wins together, that would really bolster your resume going into the tournament. New Mexico is 19-6, 10-4 in conference. They're just behind San Diego State. And I believe they lost to San Diego State the first time around. And
Yes.
these two teams are very comparable. They're the teams that are going to be compared. So these are the two teams that are fighting for a bid. They're 1-4 in quad one. They're 10-2 in quad 2 and 3. So they've just not been able to keep it up with the quad 2 or the quad 1 teams. But if you can get this rematch, you can get the win in this rematch against San Diego State. It does make it look better for head to head of when you're going to put the teams in, especially because that's the most recent game. So I do think New Mexico has a great chance. The Mountain West will likely send 3 teams. So it's really New Mexico and San Diego State fighting for that final spot, Briggs.
And they've got a freebie win tonight against Air Force, which hasn't won a conference game yet this year. But looking at the rest of the way, yeah, I mean, you mentioned that head to head. They have the win over San Diego, or they lost against San Diego State the first time. They have the redemption chance on the 28th, and then Colorado State and Utah State to finish out the season. So, again, I think this is another one of those things where if they can go and win out, which isn't completely out of the picture, you get that because you only lost by 4 to San Diego State the first time. You go back and get the revenge. The Mountain West will be sending Utah State, San Diego State, and New Mexico to March Madness.
There you go. Cal 18-8. They're 6-7 in conference. They're 4-5 in quad one, 0-3 quad two. They will face the ACC's easiest schedule, but they have a lot of work to do and not a lot of time to do it. They're the last team in the first four out, projection wise, and the two bubble teams that you have from the ACC, they have losing records in conference, and Cal, they have not been able in conference play. They just haven't been able to string wins together. It's really been a struggle for them, and so they, I don't, I don't think they play another ranked team. I could be wrong, but I don't think they play another ranked team. So you have a couple of teams that you play that are on the bubble, and so a the four quad one wins really help you, but just man, those three quad three losses or quad two losses are really going to hurt you when it comes to resume comparison. And so the ACC, I do wonder how the committee looks at the ACC because the ACC has been down over the last couple years, and they've been a lot better this year than they were last year. But I do wonder how the committee will look at the ACC versus how many teams they're going to allow in, given that Cal still has a lot of work to do and not a lot of time to do it, Briggs.
I will say, how about the Virginia comeback out of the grave? And
Oh,
because I
yeah.
mean, last year they were abysmal. 2 years ago they were pretty bad too. Kind of seeing the Tony Elliott era out the door, and 22-3 this year, have a lot of marquee wins. So good on them getting back up to the top. But Cal's schedule coming in isn't the hardest, but it's also not a walk in the park. Um, they play a lot of the middle of the pack teams, like very equal competition, if you want to call it that. Um, but I don't know, because if I was to put their schedule up against someone like um, some of these SEC teams that are also on the bubble, I think those SEC teams have the better like strength of schedule argument, strength of record. Like they've done better against better teams. They've have some of the more marquee wins. Whereas you're looking at Cal, they've lost to almost every single ranked team. I think the only ranked team or ranked win they have is North Carolina. Yeah. Oh, and they beat UCLA. Okay. But I don't know how their schedule is going to rack up come Selection Sunday against some of these other teams that are on the bubble. So I don't know what else they could do because they don't have too stiff of a competition left to finish out the season.
Like I said, ACC's easiest schedule left to go. Not a lot of time to do that work. Virginia Commonwealth, they're 20-6, 10-2. They're 0-4 against quad one, which really hurts. They have one chance left against maybe a vulnerable St. Louis team. St. Louis just dropped their second game of the year tonight against Rhode Island. They have a 9-game win streak currently, and they have a couple more opportunities to keep winning. I do think if VCU can finish out the conference schedule with their wins, they can push themselves, especially with the other teams around them giving some help.
Do you think the A10's only sending, I guess, how many teams do you think will ultimately get in? Because do you think George Mason will squeak in as a third?
Over VCU or over?
No. So you have St. Louis, VCU, and George Mason at the top of the A10. 24-2, 20-6, and 21-5, respectively, for the three of them. Do you think all three of them can squeeze in?
I think they need help around them. VCU's the first team in the next four out, so they need a lot of help. They have a couple of teams to jump, but a lot of these teams do play tougher schedules than the A10 typically provides, and I think the A10 is close enough where you can afford to have some of these teams jump, and so or have this VCU compete for the conference championship. I think that will get looked at if you go on a run in the conference tournament. And especially with how good St. Louis is, they might want to give the A10 another shot, especially because I think St. Louis is pretty much in no matter what. If VCU can win the conference championship, I do think they have a really, or even if they go to the conference championship game, they have a really good shot of getting in. Another team in Virginia, you have Virginia Tech. They're 17-9, 6-7 in conference. They had the big quad one win against Clemson last week, and then they go and get blown out by Florida State at home. Just kind of ran out of gas after an emotional win against Clemson. They have three quad one wins. They're 7-2 in quad 2 and 3, undefeated in quad 4, of course. But that blowout loss to Florida State really hurts them. I think last week they were one of the teams in the first four out. They were the second team out, and now they're dropped all the way down to the sixth team out. So that blowout loss to Florida State, especially on your home court, really hurts your chances of getting in, especially after you had momentum with that win against Clemson. There's, I don't, it's just, you're getting so late in the season where you don't have a lot of opportunities to bolster your resume anymore. And I think Virginia Tech's going to run themselves out of some time.
So they did beat Virginia earlier in the year. They beat Clemson, and their two ranked games left are at 16 North Carolina and at 14 UVA. So I think it's going to take, because they just lost by one to Miami tonight. So I think it's going to take a win at both North Carolina and Virginia, which is a tough ask to do for a team that has seemingly kind of run out of gas since that Clemson game that you just mentioned. And they have a kind of get right game against Wake Forest coming up on Saturday. But looking at it, the first, I don't think they've played North Carolina yet this year. They haven't. But North Carolina, I think, relatively has had another kind of down year compared to what you'd expect
And they're
historically
vulnerable. They're
over the
vulnerable
last
right
10.
now.
So I think you get some momentum back at the Wake Forest game and then go in there and try and eke out a nail biter against North Carolina. I think you can have some hope going into those last two games of the season against Boston College and UVA, in which ultimately to finish out the season against your rival, I can't think of a better way to go out.
I agree. And with North Carolina, they're very vulnerable right now. Caleb Wilson, we talked about that on the pod. Caleb Wilson being out, I believe he's out for the season. And now North Carolina, I believe, dropped one tonight. They dropped the game to, I want to say it was Miami after the Duke win. And so now you have an opportunity against a vulnerable North Carolina team that's very already in the tournament. They're more than likely not going to fall out. So there's opportunities there for Virginia Tech, but they have to come close to winning out or go on a crazy run in the conference tournament. Moving to Seton Hall, they are 18-8, 8-7 in conference. They're 1-5 quad one, and they have some opportunities. They have two of the better teams in the country in UConn and St. John's coming up, and those two games, if you can pull one or maybe two of them out and pull up those upsets, you really can push yourself into the tournament because those are two big wins. You're right now the seventh team out. So I think you got to at least win one of those games and win the rest of the way other than the other one. But I don't know if it'll be enough, especially with how good UConn's been this year. St. John's under Rick Pitino has been incredible. So I they have to be very upset-minded to be able to pull this out. And it kind of seemed like the season was getting away from them for a little while. They've kind of pulled it somewhat back together, and they need to have their eyes forward to get one of these upsets against UConn or St. John's Briggs.
So both times that they played UConn, or I guess the two times they played the two teams, um, they only lost by 5. So it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that on the last game of the season with St. John's comes to Seton Hall that they are able to pull out an upset. Now they did lose by 5 to UConn at home, so going to UConn and trying to win is going to be a much harder task than it is to win at home against St. John's. But I think all you need is one here to really kind of vault yourself up, and then have a couple of these other teams that are on the bubble that you need to lose ahead of you lose. Because I think with only needing one win, it's very doable for them. And outside of that, the DePaul and Xavier teams shouldn't put up too much of a contest. Now that I say that, though, would be a bad idea to just go and fade whatever I say. Um, but the teams above them, I think, have a lot harder of tasks in front of them than Seton Hall does.
Especially with only needing one of those wins against those top teams. West Virginia, as I mentioned earlier, they've been kind of on the bubble the last couple years. They're 16-9, 7-5 in conference. They have 4 quad 1 wins, but they are 2-3 against quad 2. They picked up a big win at UCF I believe it was over the weekend. They will have a couple more opportunities soon against the upper half of the Big 12, which we know how good that is. So they got a lot of work to do, but I do think with the opportunities upcoming for West Virginia, they are able to push it ahead, and they will be able to push it ahead, especially because it feels like this West Virginia team is destined for a tournament appearance at some point. I don't think when I was looking at it, I don't think it was the most egregious schedule left, but there are a couple of opportunities to really bolster that resume. But you can't really afford another loss because I don't think they're really going to go far in the Big 12 tournament. So I really don't think they can really afford another loss, but I'll get your thoughts on them real quick, Briggs.
So I think their big game that they have left is a BYU team that's been kind of treading water as of late. 5, or I guess they're 3-8, 3-5 over their last 8. What a mouthful there. With BYU having games against Arizona and Iowa State. So being able to catch BYU kind of after a absolute slugfest of a stretch right there, I think you have a chance, and I think that's a must-win game. Needing to jump so far over some of these other teams, but they're not. They're not out of the fight yet. And you look at that BYU team that's kind of struggling. And you mentioned vulnerable earlier. Yeah, I think you go in there with a fighter's chance.
Is that game at Brigham Young or is it
It's in
in Morgantown?
it's in Morgantown.
There is chance. There is a chance. One more team I want to talk about because this team is not guaranteed. I believe they're 25-0 now. Does Miami, Ohio get left out if they don't win the MAC championship? The MAC hasn't received multiple bids since 1999. They have the 347th strength of schedule. They have no quad 1 games. They are 2-0 in quad 2 games. And the committee has never excluded an eligible team with less than 4 losses, except with the exception of the COVID year. So and this isn't really about if they can make it, because obviously if Miami, Ohio keeps winning, like they will they will get in. But if they take a loss in the conference tournament, or even take a loss in the regular season and then lose in the conference tournament, does Miami make it in?
I don't think so because they don't have that win on their schedule. Where I mean, we talked. Oh, I mean, their best win might be a ODU, maybe Akron.
Akron, I believe when I was looking at it, Akron has a higher like net ranking or predictive ranking. I forget which ranking it was, but I just find it hard if, say, Miami goes undefeated the rest of the way in the regular season and they lose to in the conference championship game. I think it's really hard to leave that team out. I just, and maybe that's me, but yeah, I can't see it, man. Where they get left out for it. I just don't understand how you can go have only one loss or two losses and get left out of the tournament. I think the committee would ultimately put them in, and they'd probably get killed in the first round. But either way, it's still impressive to be 25-0, and we're in mid-February, talking about you being the only undefeated team left in college basketball, no matter how hard your schedule was. Granted, the no quad one games, whatever, but against their opportunities against quad two teams, they are 2-0. So I feel like you got to give them some credit in that respect, in any way, shape, or form. Any parting thoughts, Briggs?
I, I think the bigger question is: do you think they finish the season undefeated, the regular season?
I mean, why not ride with them? I mean, they have won 25 straight games. And granted, all their games left are kind of just landmines. It's just waiting for you to make the wrong step and then it's going to blow up in your face. But I feel like you kind of have to ride with them at this point, considering they've been so good when they've needed to and continued to win some of these games. Even though they're hard fought and like they look like they're kind of out of it, and then they're able to pull it out late. So I think ultimately they'll end up losing in the conference tournament. I think it'll be a very controversial point in in that respect. Alrighty. Well, we thank you so much for tuning in. We ended up pushing it hope to about 50 minutes. So thank you for tuning in. Stay tuned for episode 41 that should be coming out sometime this weekend. We hope you enjoyed and have a great week, and God bless.